Let's talk about Space Ace for the Super Nintendo. Game number 133 on my misguided quest to beat 800 Super Nintendo games was Space Ace, an adaptation of the classic Laserdisc QuickTime Event cartoon from Don Bluth's animation studio. While it regularly tops lists of the worst SNES games, Space Ace is far from an unplayable mess. It just kind of misses the mark. So let's take a deeper look at the game, where it goes wrong, and how it's meant to be played. The game takes great pains to copy most of the sequences from the original arcade cartoon, but on a system that is not capable of that. So since they can't copy the actual moment-to-moment gameplay, they try to make you act out what Dexter, Space Ace, does in the cartoon. Dodging robots, riding a rocket cycle, jumping from dissolving platforms, dying if you get hit even once by anything, etc. But the jumping and movement feels bad, and the game is terrible at communicating what you're actually supposed to do. So it turns into using trial and error to memorize an entire 40-minute video game and then execute without making a mistake. The gameplay loop, as it's supposed to be, is you learn a level, pick up little red swirly things along the way, then get to the next level. Once you lose all your lives, each of those red swirly things gives you a time warp to practice the level that you ended on until you can execute it from beginning to end without dying. And once or twice per level, you're given the opportunity to energize and take a slightly longer path where you have the option of using Ace's blaster. I recommend learning the energize way through each level, as it always seemed easier to me, and you'll receive more power-ups as you go. That's it. 14 levels of rote memorization and the tiniest bit of exploration to find secret rooms. The secret rooms, revealed by a strange pixelation effect, are super important, as most of your power-ups and extra lives will come from them, and that gives you the best chance to succeed. The secret room on the first level has 4 time warps. This one in Space Station Alpha has 4 extra lives. This one in Barren Wasteland, 3 blaster power-ups. The one on Power Station has 3 extra lives. Space Station Beta has 4 blaster power-ups. Industrial Ruin has 4 blaster power-ups. The one on Dark Decks has 4 time warps, and that's all I was able to find. The levels themselves are fairly short, and with the exception of Motorcycle Chase, not particularly hard. The real problem, and where the game falls down the hardest, is the 2 hub worlds. To reach each stage, you must navigate 2 large and fast-moving mazes, the first of which is hard to react to without pausing every few seconds, and the second of which is hard to react to and you have to jump tiny gaps, and if you mistime anything, you die immediately. Graph paper proved enough to get me through the space maze. Once you find a path that works, you follow it as hard as you can to ensure you don't get lost, and the difficult blue section leading to the Industrial Ruin level is bothersome, but it's pretty immediately obvious if you took a wrong turn and need to start over. Of course, there are also perfect maps on GameFAQs, which makes it even easier. The second maze is somewhat linear, which takes care of part of the problem. Eventually, it just becomes a memorization and reaction issue like every other stage in the game. The only real difficult stage is the motorcycle chase, since the bike behaves differently than even the normal awkward movement on other levels, and you're required to use Ace's blaster, which was entirely optional on every level prior to that. The blaster has a weird control scheme that may take a little while to get used to. It starts with a target that is centered on Ace, and pressing X will cycle through enemies or targets to the left of Ace, and A will cycle through enemies to the right. You have to wait for the bullseye to catch up to the target before you can actually fire. Again, it all comes back to the game just not telling you or preparing you for what you need to do to succeed. It all becomes trial and error and memorization. It's somewhat like I Wanna Be the Guy, but where that game is playing with tropes and making fun of expectations, Space Ace sincerely thinks this is the way to go. Space Ace has a habit of deliberately misleading you. It will intentionally and obviously lay out a pattern only to immediately do the opposite. Attacks will go high, low, high, and then high again just to make you mad. The game is trying to emulate the quarter-sucking nature of the arcade cartoon, and in many ways doing a good job. None of this made me like Space Ace for the Super Nintendo more, but it kind of soured me on the arcade game the more I realized it was doing the exact same thing. All in all, it's not terribly difficult, and if you want to impress your friends by beating an infamous Super Nintendo game, there are worse choices out there. I probably won't play it again, ever, but I don't regret seeing it through to the end.